हरिहंत सिद्ध सुर उपाध्याय साधु सर्व अर्थ के प्रकाशी मांगलिक उपकारी है। तीन को स्वरूप जानी रागते भई जो भक्ति काय को नमाय स्तुति को उच्चारी है। धन्य धन्य तुम्ही से काज सब आज भयो कर जोरी बारंबार वंदना हमारी है। मंगल कल्याण सुख ऐसो हम चाहते हो मेरी ऐसी दशा जैसी तुम धारी है। हो मेरी ऐसी दशा जैसी तुम धारी है। जय जिनेन्द्र। Last week we completed in fact merits and demerits, right? Punya and Pap. So that was complete. And then the next chapter, substantive and instrumental causes. This we have already done, that Vijalji had taught us, Now coming on to the lesson number 5, the experience of the soul and investigation of the elements. In Hindi, the name of the chapter is Atmanubhuti or Tattva Vichar. So Tattva Vichar is contemplation of fundamental elements. But here it is written as investigation of the elements. So you need to change something on the language. So the exact meaning of Tattva Vichar, or a good meaning of Tattva Vichar, would be contemplation of fundamental elements. Tattva is fundamental elements, Vichar is contemplation. Now, investigation cannot be, Vichar. Investigation is that you have to find out something. So this is not apt. Contemplation of fundamental elements is apt. And Atmanubhuti. So Atmanubhuti is experience of the soul, or self-experience, or self-realization. It's all correct. So now this is one of the most important chapter of not this book, not our syllabus, but whatever you want to do in the name of getting liberated, it starts from here. Without self-realization, without self-experience, without the experience of the soul, path of liberation does not begin at all. Okay? So this is basically, we can say that each and every soul who wants to get liberated have this in their mind to experience themselves. And everybody is trying rigorously, to find a solution that how we can experience ourselves. The problem is that as we can see through eyes, this is fan, this is laptop, this is mobile, this is book, this is pen. You can see these are all tangible things. But soul is not tangible. Soul is not something that you can see through eyes, hear from ears, taste it, nothing, because it is not a matter. Spars, ras, gandh, and varn. Spars is touch, ras is taste, gandh is smell, and varn is the different colors that we see. Okay? So all these are qualities of matter, Pudgal Dravya. Soul does not have these qualities. So soul, we cannot know our own soul through these senses, through these 5 senses. because these five senses can see and experience only Pudgal Dravya, matter, not the soul. So that's why the experience of the soul has become difficult. But it is not impossible by following the path as shown by our Panch Parmeshthis, as shown by our Aryant and Siddh Bhagwan, as shown by our passionless monks, if we follow the path shown by them, if we follow the path written in our scriptures, we can also realize ourselves. We can also have self-experience, and we can also begin our path of liberation right now, in this birth, and now only. This is quite possible, okay? But to get liberated in this life is not possible, because I think Jambu Swami was the last one to achieve liberation, okay? So after Mahavir Swami, Gautam Gandhar. So the day Mahavir Swami attained liberation, the same day Gautam Gandhar attained omniscience knowledge. When Gautam Gandhar got liberated, the same day Sudharmacharya got omniscience. And the day Sudharmacharya got liberated, Jambu Swami got omniscience. And Jambu Swami was the last one. Jambu Swami was the last monk to get to liberation. After that, nobody has attained liberation. And just because this is the fifth era, those were also the exceptions, like Gautam Gandhar and, Sudharmacharya and Jambu Swami. All these were exceptions, just because this is Hunda Ausarpani era. After many Ausarpani and Utsparani, one Hunda Ausarpani comes. So again, we are in the fifth era now, and that also special type of fifth one. So getting into religion, getting this kind of knowledge, getting access to this kind of studies is very rarest of rare, you can say. So we can always say that we have now fruition of great auspicious karmas. The karmas that we did in the past, auspicious karmas, now that has come into fruition. Because of that, we are getting all this easily. So to experience yourself, self-realization is the motive for most of the mumukshus, most of the mundane existence right now. And nobody knows the exact path, because for that you need to study the scriptures. And people generally go to the temple, they perform all the vows and other activities, but hardly very difficult for people to get into this kind of studies. So getting into this kind of studies is also very rare. And out of those people who get into studies of this, experience thyself is also very rare. So it's written in there that in today's time, there will be very few learned person, very few learned scholar, very few samyak drashti person with rise belief, very few. Todoramalji has said about this in the 8th chapter of Moksha Marg Prakashak. So very few means few. It can be like, it cannot be in large numbers. That is what we can make out. So the name of the chapter is the experience of the soul or self-experience and investigation of the elements. Tattva Vichar, that is contemplation of fundamental elements. Now we'll read the paragraph. Initially, we'll read the first two paragraphs and we'll go a bit slow, but this chapter you need to understand very deeply, because if you are able to understand the whole process, how the self-realization happens, then you can at least attempt, you can try in those direction, and you never know, you can experience. It is not that you have to study so much. And so even the subhuman state, the people, the animals who have got, five senses and the mind, they can also experience themselves. So even if subhuman animals can get self-experience, why can't we? We can also. Even the people in hellish being, Narki, they can also have self-realization. And of course, people in heavenly being, they are also able to have self-realization. So self-realization is possible in all the four states of existence. So it is not something that we cannot, achieve it or do it. Only thing is we have to follow the direction given by our Panch Parmeshthis. So first two paragraphs. Darshit ji, you read first two paragraphs. I'll make you the co-host. 1 minute. Aditi ji, I'll make you the co-host. Yeah. Page number 28. Now you can share the screen. You have the book with you, Darshit ji?
I'm actually reading from the screen on my computer. So I have it in front of me, yes.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The only remedy of getting correct replies to questions like what is happiness and who am I is the experience of the soul, and the initial method of spiritual experience is the investigation of the elements. The spiritual experience, however, grows by eliminating its own initial stage of the investigation of the elements, for such investigation is associated with attachment or aversion, while the soul is a self-feeling element without these accompaniments. We cannot have the experience of the self with all attachments and aversions. The above facts have been explained in the essays What is Happiness and Who Am I in the previous texts. The question in hand is what is the state of spiritual experience and what is investigation of the elements? Sorry. By introvert leanings towards the soul to see it face to face and have the emotional oneness with it is the spiritual experience. The real meeting of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness from the non-self entities and to merge it with the eternal soul substance. It is all sentience, having been constructed by sentience itself, being attracted towards this attribute and being the producer of the modification of real element of consciousness itself. That spiritual experience is one indivisible state of the mind, though accepting the divisions of the knower, the known, and the knowing activity. The meaning is that the knower is the soul, and which is known is also the soul, and the operation of the consciousness is also nothing but the soul.
Yeah,
You want me to continue?
No.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
so the only remedy of getting correct replies to question like what is happiness? So we have done this chapter. Do you remember? Anybody remembers where we had done this chapter? What is
Yes.
happiness? Yeah.
Chapter 5, I think, Tattva Gnan Patmala Part 1.
Yes. Right. Tattwagyan Patmala Part 1 and chapter number 5. Okay. So what is happiness is most recently that we have done. And what about who am I?
Bhagavad, maybe?
वितराग विज्ञान.
Yeah. Vitrag Vigyan Part.
3.
Good. Part 3 and chapter 5. Again, chapter 5. Okay. So these two questions were nicely answered over there. I hope you may not remember the whole chapter, but you can always remember the gist or the summary of that chapter. So what is happiness was very well defined in this Tattva 1. And who am I? You know, so who am I? These both questions are related to this essay. This is again an essay. Okay. So this again essay is connected to these two. What is happiness and who am I? Because if you want to know what is happiness, you have to experience your soul. If you want to know who am I, you have to experience of the soul. So the only remedy of getting correct replies to questions like what is happiness and who am I is the experience of the soul. And the initial method of acquiring spiritual experience or the self-experience or the self-realization or Atmanubhuti is the investigation of the elements. Not the investigation of the elements, but the contemplation. Contemplation of fundamental elements. Okay. Tattva Vichar. So whenever you study something, your thoughts always follows that study if you have studied it properly, you know. Like if you go to see a movie, you know, while you come home and for few days, you know, or some of the scenes you may remember till your whole life. That gets so much of engrossed in your mind, you know, you never forget it. Similarly, when you read a scripture, okay, so whenever the passions get mild, then only you can get into scriptural studies. And once you are into scriptural studies, if you properly understand it, then you will have thoughts on that. But I was thinking like this, but here it is written like this in the scriptural text. Okay. So I am correct or this is correct. If this is correct, then my belief is not correct. So I should mend my belief, you know. So this way we study and then we contemplate. So contemplation is very important. Unless and until we contemplate, we cannot arrive at a decision. There are so many thoughts coming to our minds on a day-to-day basis, you know. And some of the things are very important. You know, I need to remember these, but still you forget. Because these thoughts coming and going and something you remember and something you don't remember, these are all very independent kind of activities, you know. This is not something in our hand, you know. It's happening all automatically. So contemplation, okay. So having said that, it is not in our hand, but when you talk of efforts, then you talk from conventional point of view, and then we say that you have to contemplate and then you have to arrive at a decision, and then only you can experience yourself. So there is a process, you know. So the main part in the process is the contemplation. That's why the heading of the chapter is Atmanubhuti or Tattva Vichar, the experience of the soul and contemplation of fundamental elements. Okay, so these thoughts, very important. These thoughts is very important. We are all having some kind of thoughts, going on, whether now you are studying. If your active consciousness is into this study, that's why we prefer to have live classes, because when you are live in front of a preacher, it is very easy to grasp, you can just simply focus what he is talking about, and you can easily connect very fast. Then comes this Zoom kind of live classes, and then comes the recordings, listening through recordings. So these are all process, and the best would be to study yourself. You open the book yourself, you study it, you study one sentence and you contemplate. You study one sentence and you contemplate. If there is anything that you feel that you are not understanding, you again contemplate on that, and maybe you will see that the answer comes from within only. And of course, there are sometimes something as instrumental cause also outside. So that we are not denying. But the main part is that this understanding comes from within, So when you contemplate, then there is every chance that you will remember that thing also, and you can arrive at a decision also. Now you go to a market to buy a, say, mobile phone, okay? So there are many mobile shops, okay? So again, you have to contemplate that whether I want to buy from here or there, because you have limited time and you want to go to one of the shops. So you will again contemplate, and you will come to a conclusion that, oh, that shop is very good. I had bought there 10 years ago and it works so nicely, and I brought the other products also, and they also were very good quality. So that's a reliable shop, So now you go there. In between 2-3 shops have you came across, but you thought, no, let's not go there. Again, they will, tempt us to buy from them. And we never know how their quality will be. We have never bought from them. So again, that thought comes in your mind, but you avoid going there just because you have this experience that this shops gives very genuine products. So now you contemplated, and you contemplated, not only you contemplated, but you also arrived at a decision that I don't want to go to this shop and I want to go to that shop. Now this could only happen if you contemplate. Okay. So contemplation of fundamental elements is very, very important for the self-experience. Okay. And the initial method of spiritual experience is the investigation of the elements. So now you know the relation between self-experience and contemplation of fundamental elements. If we say that self-experience is the result, then cause is the contemplation of fundamental elements. If you say that contemplation of fundamental elements is the effect or the outcome, then the cause would be reading of the text. If you say reading of the text is the result, okay, then going to true God, true scriptures, and true passionless monks is the instrumental cause. Okay. So we have to, there is a cause and effect relationship, without any cause, an effect cannot happen. Okay. So to have that effect, we need to find out the cause and get into it. The spiritual experience, however, grows by eliminating its initial stage of the investigation of the elements. For such investigation is associated with attachment or aversion. Now, when you want to do the experience, when you want to experience yourself, when you want to do self-realization, you have to eliminate these thoughts. These thoughts were on the soul itself, okay? But the thoughts also you have to eliminate to experience yourself, okay? Like if you want to go to the other side of the bank, river, then what you have to do? You don't know the swimming. So what you can do? You will take a boat, okay? And then you will travel across the other bank. And then what you will do? You will still be in the boat or you will get down. You have to get down. You have to leave the boat. But the boat only brought me from there to here. Yeah, boat did brought you from there to here. But now, if you don't leave the boat, you will not reach your destination. Okay? So, these thoughts, this contemplation is like that only. Initially, you have to contemplate. But when you want to experience, you have to leave that thoughts besides. Okay? So that is what it is being said here. The spiritual experience, however, grows by eliminating its own initial stage of the investigation of the elements. Okay? So this investigation or contemplation, that has to be eliminated. For such investigation is associated with attachment or aversion. Attachment is rag and aversion is dvesh. While the soul is a self-feeling element. Okay. So this thoughts is associated with attachment and aversion. While the soul is self-feeling element. Without these accompaniments. So soul, the experience of the soul is without attachment and aversions. And these thoughts are with attachment and aversions. If you want to do self-experience, you have to leave these thoughts aside. You have to eliminate this thought also. We cannot have the experience of the self with all attachments and aversions. That means they want to say that if you want to realize yourself, you remove these attachments and aversions. You eliminate these attachments and aversions. You cannot have self-realization with attachments and aversions. The above facts has been explained in the essays, What is Happiness and Who Am I in the previous text. The question in hand is, what is the state of spiritual experience and what is investigation of the elements? Okay. So the question in hand is the heading of the chapter. What is the state of spiritual experience? Okay. That means what is experience of the soul? What is self-experience? What is self-realization? All are same in meaning. So this is the question. And what is the next question? What is investigation of the elements? What do you mean by contemplation of fundamental elements? These two are the main questions for this essay. And the heading is also about the same. So this was a brief introduction to the article. And now we further go deep, by introvert leaning towards the soul. Now, what do you mean by introvert leaning? Antarmukhi, So, our upyog is what? Active consciousness. What is upyog? Active consciousness. This our upyog or active consciousness is always involved in sensory objects, Sometimes it is after reading something, reading newspaper, watching TV, This is one. Then sometimes it listens to music also. Sometimes it listens to lectures also. Then sometimes it gets involved in taste of good foods, Sometimes it involves in taking good smells from flowers, scent, etc., etc. And sometimes it is involved in touch, So these are all the things that soul has inclination on, from time immortal. He never inclined towards his own soul. Okay, he never had a leaning in his own soul, but he was always having engagement of active consciousness in sensory objects. Only that. One is over, then he indulges in the next one. When the next one is fulfilled, then he indulges in the next. But never the desire of consuming these sensory objects stops. It keeps on changing, but there is never an end to it. And this habit is there since time immortal. Okay. So by introvert leaning towards the soul, now we were earlier leaning towards this 5 sense objects, but now we have to transform the force from there to our soul. And once we do this, we can experience our soul. So our whole studies, whatever efforts we are putting, that is with only one purpose, that what we have been doing from time immortal, getting engaged in sensory objects, 5 sense objects, now we have to bring that active consciousness from there to our soul. Okay. So we have to do this introvert leaning or inner leaning into our self. By introvert leaning towards the soul, to see it face to face. To see it face to face. Why it's written, face to face? Because the Hindi word is Atma Shakshatkar. Shakshat means face to face, So that's why they have literally translated it. But the actual meaning will be to see it face to face means to experience the soul. Okay. By introvert leanings toward the soul, to see it face to face and have the emotional oneness with it is the spiritual experience. So they have given the definition of spiritual experience, that active consciousness is engaged in 5 sensory objects. Now you remove that from there, and bring it towards your soul. And once you do that, you have emotional oneness with it. So that active consciousness gets diluted in our soul and the self-realization happens. That is the state of spiritual experience. That is the state of self-experience. That is the state of Atmanubhuti. Atma is self, Anubhuti is experience. So self-experience. So this is the definition. You have to remember it very by heart. By introvert leaning towards the soul, or by taking shelter in the soul, by taking refuge in the soul. To see it face to face means to experience it, okay, and have the emotional oneness with it is the spiritual experience. the real meeting of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness from the non-self entities. So this active consciousness was busy in non-self entities, that is 5 sensory objects. Okay. And now you are removing that engagement of active consciousness into the non-self entities. Okay. So from there, you are bringing the operative consciousness towards yourself and to merge it with the eternal soul substance. Now, if you merge it, then you will have this state of self-realization. This is the experience. This much you have to do. What you have to do? That from time immortal, our active consciousness or the upyog is involved outside external objects, 5 sensory objects. Okay. Now you need to create so much force in yourself that that active consciousness gets removed and it inclines towards your soul. Now, for that, you need very serious studies of scriptures, and the sole purpose is, to know the greatness of the soul, that the soul is an eternal substance. It has no birth, it has no death, it is ever existing, and it has infinite qualities. Now, when you realize that, oh, I am that soul who never takes birth, who never dies, I am that eternal soul, and I have infinite attributes, not 1 or 2 attributes, but infinite attributes. So now when you realize the greatness of yourself, when you realize that what kind of properties you have, you automatically, the active consciousness was indulging outside external things because he wanted to experience happiness. And he thought happiness is in those objects. Happiness is in TV, happiness is in good food, happiness is in good smell, happiness is in, seeing good objects. So he believed that. And because of that false belief, he was getting engaged into external objects. But by regular hammering, you have to just literally hammer. Our acharyas also did that. They wrote so many books. They could have written 1 book. No, they have written so many books so that someday you will finish this book, then you will start a new book, then you will finish that book. In this way, you will be continuously involved in studies. And when do something continuously, then that active consciousness also gets tamed. It gets trained. Okay? Tamed and trained. So it gets trained, and then it in itself creates a power or a potential, to move away from those sensory objects and come to the soul. So this transformation has to happen. And once this transformation happens, the experience follows. So we are going step by step. Okay. So the real meeting of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness from the non-self entities and to merge it with the eternal soul substance. If we can merge it, there will be an experience. It is all sentience. That experience is all sentience. Sentience means Gyanmai. Having been constructed by sentience itself. Okay. So who is the doer of that thing? Who is the constructor? The sentience itself. Being attracted towards this attribute. So this attribute is again of knowing and being utpadak, being the producer of the modification of real element of consciousness. So one is the doer, okay, and one is the knower, one is the knowledge, and one is the reflection in knowledge. Okay, so when our soul gets reflected in our own knowledge modification, okay, then this self-realization happens. Okay, so there are so many things that is being reflected every moment in our knowledge modification. Okay, and whatever is reflected, what mistake we do oneness with that object, we do mindness with that object, this is mine. Then what we else do, we become a doer of those objects, and we become a consumption of those objects. So this, because of these four mistakes, oneness, mindness, doership, and consumership or absorption. Okay, because of this, ekatva buddhi, mamatva buddhi, kartutva buddhi, and bhoktutva buddhi. Okay, because of that enjoyment, bhoktutva. So because of this, because of the delusion, we are, whatever is reflecting on the screen, on our knowledge screen, you know, our knowledge is itself like a screen. As there are materials which get reflected when you put it in front of a mirror, okay, same way our knowledge screen is like a mirror. There the objects get reflected. Only it is getting reflected. Huh? We don't have any relation with those objects. I am a soul, okay? And if I am a soul, if it is, that is my identity, then what do I do? Then I would say we are an observer. We are just knower and perceiver. We are not doer of anything. So if you accept yourself to be a knower and perceiver, then your knowledge is correct. Then your knowledge is as per the scriptural studies. Then your knowledge is what our God, Arihant and Siddh Parmeshti has told us. And they followed these steps, you know, and they got liberated. And if we also follow this path, we will also get liberated. So now we know we have access to the path of liberation. So the main part is over. Now we have to just be on that line itself. Don't deviate from that, you know, path. You have to follow that path very rigorously. Okay. So what we have to do in terms of following that path, what we have to do? So our active consciousness, which has been engaging in external non-self objects, okay, you have to transform that active consciousness from external objects to your soul. So that introvert leanings, you know, the word was here was introvert leanings. So this introvert leanings is the effort in the path of liberation. Are you ready to take that step? Are you ready to know further about it? Then I will proceed. Are you ready? Or you want to just have knowledge for the purpose of knowledge, or you are having this knowledge, you know, to put it in use. And what is that use? We want to realize ourselves. That's all. We want nothing else from this knowledge, from this birth, There is no way that I can carry anything to the next birth, Today I am here in this body, and when my ayukam will end, I will leave this body. This body will remain here, my family members will burn it them, but the soul has already gone. So we have very limited time in this rented apartment. This body is our rented apartment. Now the best is you get your active consciousness. You learn a process by which your active consciousness, which has been engaging in external sensory objects, okay, you transform that active consciousness, you mold that active consciousness, mold that flow of active consciousness from external to internal. Now there are drums, when large drums have to be filled with water, what they do? They don't fetch it with bucket and put it in the that. They bring a pipe, they connect the pipe from one end to the tap, and they put the pipe inside the drum, and then they open that tap. Then water flows through that pipe and goes directly into the drum. Okay. So now there were 3 drums. So the first drum has almost filled up. So now what you will do? You will remove that pipe from that drum and put it in the empty drum. That you will do. So what we have to do here? Can anyone tell me this example from this example? Can anyone tell me what will be the principle? I was discussing it just now.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me.
So when it comes, it fills, then you have to stop and take it to the next drum.
Yeah, so that was the example. And now, in terms of principle, what we have to do here in our soul?
We have to cut off
Cut off what?
The stoppage?
No, cut off excess maya, excess passions.
No, you didn't listen to me what I was saying. Yeah,
The
tell me.
influx?
No,
Stoppage of influx.
no,
Stoppage of
no. These are all correct, but from negative side. I am telling you positively what we have to do. Why I have given that example of drums and water, You know that if I want to fill up that second drum, first one is already filled up. So now I want to fill up that second drum. So what I do? I remove the pipe from there to there. That's what we do, no?
So transform.
Yes, transform. Now tell me, transform of what? Aditi, you tell me, transform of what? Our active consciousness. उपयोग जो पर में लगा था, इंद्रियों के विषय में लगा था, उपयोग को वहां से हटा करके कहाँ लगाना?
Second drum.
Second drum, but in this principle,
Soul.
Right. Okay. So this active consciousness, which was engaged, from time immortal. From time immortal, it is engaged in external objects. Now, can anybody give me a good answer why it is engaged in external objects?
It's a habit.
Yeah, it is a habit, but why? What is the reason for that habit?
Inherent
So false belief.
A false belief is also one of the causes, but I want the main cause. Because it thought that happiness will come.
somewhere else.
Happiness will come from these sensory objects. And that's why he keeps on transforming from one object to another object. Now, somebody was listening to, somebody was watching TV. Okay. So after some time, he gets, he gets what you call bored. Now, what he do? He go and have a coffee. So again, it is test. Now he's enjoying the test. He's looking for happiness. So why? So he is now enjoying the coffee. Now, after drinking the coffee, what he will do? Let's put on that music. So now he is into the object of ears. After that, what he will do? He will smell.
Shopping.
Let's go to the garden and see the nice fragrances coming out of those trees and the flowers. So now he's into taking that steps and going to the garden to have that good fragrances. Then he will touch something. He will go into a sofa and just lie down. Now it is the touch sense. Okay. So he's changing the sensory objects, but his objective is to derive satisfaction from them, to derive happiness from them. But the fact is that there is no happiness in those objects. Happiness is an attribute of the soul. It is not an attribute of the matter. So how can you get happiness from those objects? So you have to take a decision here that there is no happiness in an outside world. We have experienced everything. What not we have experienced, but we never got satisfied. If one time we have got the satisfaction, we would not have indulged in any other sensory objects. But we have never been satisfied. Okay, there is no satisfaction there. Okay, so that's why this active consciousness was engaged in external objects. Now you need to transform that active consciousness from there to soul. This transformation will come only when you study these scriptures. Okay, not only study, but then you have to contemplate. Not only contemplate, then you have to arrive at a decision. Okay, so until and unless you have arrived at a decision, then up to then there is no work being done. Okay, so always read with a purpose that I want to decide on few facts that I'm reading today. Now, now you know the background of this whole chapter. So this whole chapter addresses that answer, that the experience of the soul and investigation of the elements. How to investigate, how to contemplate on fundamental elements. These are the, because when you contemplate on fundamental elements, then you arrive at a decision. And with that decision, you can experience your soul. So for experience of soul, the fundamental elements nature should be very clear. Okay. And unless and until you do errors in fundamental elements, you cannot realize yourself. So you see, these are all very connected. Okay. So you must remember this. The real meeting of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness from the non-self entities, and then what you do it, and to merge it with the eternal soul substance. So this much is your efforts. ये आपका कार्य है. This you have to do in this life. Okay. This life is meant for this only. Nothing will come with me. Only this active consciousness that will come with me. And that active consciousness is every time involved in some objects or the other. Okay. In other language, in that same example of mirror, every moment something will be reflected on your knowledge mirror. Okay. And now something getting reflected every moment. Now you have to, your soul is also reflecting in that mirror, but you have to identify it. So in that mirror, every moment, your soul is giving Your soul is also reflecting. Then your toxic emotions are reflecting. Okay. Your emotions of attachment, emotions of aversions, all these are reflecting. So if you are scolding something, it is reflecting. If you are cheating something, if you are cheating somebody, it is reflecting here. Okay. Our knowledge knows everything, where we are doing cheating, where we are scolding, where we are doing unnecessary, you taking pride in these things, everything, whatever passions we are going through, our knowledge knows everything. Its primary function is to know. So he knows everything. Now these are getting reflected. Okay. There is no problem if it is getting reflected. But what mistake a mundane existence do is that when it gets reflected, they do oneness with it. They do mindness with it. They become a doer of that passions, and they become a bhokta. Bhokta is enjoyment of those emotions. So ekatva buddhi, mamatva buddhi, kartutva buddhi, and bhoktatva buddhi. And because of that, new karmas are being bound. Now, what would a learned scholar do? So learned scholar has learned this technique. So when those things get reflected, that learned scholar becomes an observer. I am an observer. I will not say that this is mine. I will not that this is I am. I will not say I am the doer of that thing, and I am not the experience or enjoyer of that thing. So the learned scholar has done practice discriminative knowledge, and he knows his boundary. He knows that he is only an observer. He cannot go beyond observing. So how can I become a doer of something which is happening externally where I don't have any connections? We don't have any connection. We don't have any connection with our body. We don't have any connection with our toxic emotions. Okay. We don't have any relationship with our, what you call no karma, our house, our family, our relations, our money, whatever you say. We don't have any connections. We don't have any relation. They just are reflecting in our knowledge. And because of our wrong belief, we believe that we are attached to that. We believe that, but we don't become. That is the best part of this whole theory, that you may believe that you are a doer of this whole country. You are managing the whole country. You are managing the whole world. You can think yourself. You have liberty to think whatever you can. Okay. Nobody will come and disturb you. Nobody would even know what you are thinking. Okay. So you may think. But my question is, do you become one? No. So what we have to do is, you are complete in yourself. We don't want to complete you. I don't want to complete myself, okay? Because I'm complete in myself. Just realize this. Just accept this, okay? And just experience this. That's all. Now you can see by reading those big books, you know, and you never know when you will actually get the fruit. And here, in just a small chapter, in a few steps, you know where to put the hammer. There is a story, an example. It's an example. It's a story, but it's an example. Fictitious story. It's not a real story. So nowadays there are so automatic machines, Now everything is done by machines only. So there was a factory of manufacturing needle. Okay. And raw material was being put into it, and needle was coming out after a series of processions. Okay. Series of processes. And that were all automatic. There was nobody to take care of that factory. Only one person was there, and he was just putting the raw material in that spot, in that slot, and everything else was happening automatically. And there was a final product of needles, and that also gets automatically packed, and you are getting a final finished product. So this was a factory. So what happened, one day that factory stopped functioning. And this fellow had taken so many orders, and if he don't execute those orders, he would be incurring a very big fine. Okay, that was an export order, and he had some deadline to meet those production. He had deadline for those dispatches. So that fellow was worried. The owner was worried what to do. So he, contacted many expert mechanics on that machine, and they all came, and they were not able to, mend that machine. His production was hampering. Then his watchman said, the watchman of that factory, sir, I know one person who can do this. Okay, bring that person. So that watchman went and brought that person. And that person saw the plant. And he thought for 2 minutes. And then he said, I can do it. So the owner said that, do it. No, first you pay me. So how much? 10 lakhs rupees. So the owner said, okay, I will pay it. You do it. Okay, no, you first put the money in my account, then only I will mend it. So the owner was incurring heavy losses every day. So he has no choice. So he said, okay. So he transferred through Google Pay that money, and he received that money. He got that message, and then he took a hammer and he went inside that plant and just put a hammer at one place, and it started running. So the owner said, for putting a hammer, you are charging 10 lakhs rupees. Is it fair? So that gentleman said, I'm not charging 10 lakhs rupees for putting that hammer. The charges are where to put in. Charges is about that knowledge, where to put that hammer, So here also, what will be a cause of self-realization is how you approach it. You may have so much of knowledge, but you need to have the correct knowledge, that what will transform my active consciousness, which has been engaged in sensory objects from time immortal, now that transformation to our soul. So that transformation is what we need to do. And for that, these are all the knowledge. Because what will create a force to transform from there to here? Will create that force? Our knowledge. Not only our knowledge, we had this knowledge, but training of that knowledge in the right direction. We had this knowledge earlier also, that our happiness lies there, our happiness lies there, our happiness lies there. And because of that false knowledge, we were chasing those objects and we never got satisfied, because there was no happiness there in the first place. But due to delusion, we believe that happiness is there. So this is the story in a nutshell. This is our problem. And now to transform that active consciousness from external factors to our internal soul, this is your only job. Nothing else. Like that fellow took the hammer and put it at one place. So he knew the right connection, and because of that, he is earning so much. So when we will also learn this technique of how to transform our active consciousness from external to internal, we will realize ourselves. And when we realize ourselves, the path of liberation will start, experience of eternal bliss will begin, end of miseries will begin, end of delusion will happen, all things happening simultaneously. It is only one activity, but having different names. Okay. So our all knowledge leads us or propels us to do this transformation. And that's why we are learning new things every week, with new chapters. And this will go on for 2-3 years. And after 2-3 years, you will have all the fundamentals, whatever is required for the knowledge, to transform, to exert that pressure on active consciousness, to remove it from external source to internal. Okay. That water flowing through that pipe into that drum, now we have to remove from there to the empty drum. If you don't remove, then what will happen? Water will get wasted because it is already filled up. There is no capacity to have further water in that drum. So what will do? It will overflow, and it will get wasted. But that same pipe, if you can channelize it to that drum, empty drum, then you will have again water. So this is what we need to do. Now everyone is clear about the examples. Okay. So now I will again ask you something. Let's finish this paragraph first. The real meeting of the soul. I'm coming to that back sentence again and again, just to make you more clear. The real meeting of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness. The real meeting means the real experience. Okay. The real experience of the soul is to cut off the operative consciousness from non-self entities and to merge it. Now this merging is the transformation. Okay. And to merge it with the eternal soul substance. This is the process of self-realization. Are you ready to initiate that process? Where you will initiate that process? Where you will initiate that process?
In our soul, active.
In your soul, okay? More specific, in your substance, in your attributes, in your modification, where?
Substance.
Substance is pure itself. It has never got impure.
Modification.
It is the modification which has got impure, and it is the modification which wants to get pure. The soul says, I have never become impure. I have been to hell. I have been to Nigot, but I am pure. I have not lost a single quality. So when I was not aware I am soul, I didn't lose anything. And now I know that I am soul. So what loss I am going to incur now? Nothing. I am going to liberate happily, happily, happily. So henceforth my path will also be of happiness, and the destination will also be happiness. The treasure was there in my locker, but there was no key. So I had enough wealth, but I had no key to that locker or tijori, So I was just begging through 5 sensory objects. Give me happiness, give me happiness, give me happiness. And they never gave me happiness. Okay? Because they were never having happiness in them. So this soul, being full of attributes, infinite attributes, becomes a beggar and begs to house and house for happiness. This is our story. This is not that beggar story. This is our story. We ourselves are the owner of this, our kingdom, entire kingdom, that consists of infinite attributes and infinite modifications. This is our treasure. Okay. So we never realized that I am such a great personality. And I always considered myself to be inferior to other objects. And because of that, I never took shelter in myself. I always took shelter in external objects because I thought they are the source of happiness. And the whole happiness was lying inside me and I never knew. So it is like your hidden treasure, but you are not aware of it. Okay. I'm sorry, I have caused the limit. Today's time is over. We'll continue tomorrow, but I would suggest everyone to just read through this chapter once, and now you will have formed the base. You will realize everything. You will realize everything. You will understand everything. And in case if you don't understand, it is good that tomorrow you will understand it with more clarity, So Darshit you will have to spare time. It is only 1, 2, and 3.5 pages, out of which we have almost covered the first page. So it is almost 3 pages, maximum 3 pages. Okay. So you need to read through this not only once, but twice, and just thought on this, contemplate on this. And then you will realize what would be your duty as a soul to experience yourself. We have to, we have to define our functions, we have to define our role, we have to define our efforts. Then only we can go into the right direction. So all those will be answered tomorrow. But you can see that today a whole hour went by. We have done only 2 paragraphs, but still the second paragraph is not complete. But tomorrow I'll be completing that paragraph. And even if we take 3 classes also, I don't mind. But if you understand this nicely, you will understand all the 5 years course is over with this only 1 class, then it will be all repetition of that. But here you need to be precisely be on very attentive mode, and you have to grasp this, what the article is teaching us. So this is basically an essay. In fact, Tattvagyan to our this in CC I can give. In CC I will give you to write this essay only. So everyone will write and they will practice also. So concept clarity, paper 3 will be this essay only. Okay. So you will all have practice of that. निज निधि निज में बताई यह अनंत उपकार है, उसके लिए जिन वाणी माँ को वंदना 7 बार है, उसके लिए जिन वाणी माँ को वंदना 7 बार है। 9 बार नौकार मुद्रा गिनेंगे।
शशिकला
जय जिनेन्द्र।
TV start happening.
Just